guys, I'm David.
And I'm George.
And today we are joined by our friend Anna Edmonds. Anna is a serial entrepreneur here in the Columbia area, both in the editing world with magazines as well as, several other ventures you've been along to. But we've been talking about having you on the show for a while, so
Yes.
welcome.
Well, thank you, and I would not call me a serial entrepreneur, I would say an accidental entrepreneur and a reluctant one. I do not like being a business owner, so we'll just put that over there. But thanks for having me.
Cool Guys isn't your average real estate podcast.
Our mission is to give buyers and sellers the power of knowledge through their real estate transactions.
We do this by helping first-time homebuyers realize that there are more expenses that come with owning a home than just the loan.
We also understand there are many times move-up buyers and sellers have forgotten the process because it's been so long since their last real estate transaction.
We make the downsizing easy.
Once you get into the habit of working with us, the process becomes so smooth you won't mind to move.
We are also excited to share with you what all the Midlands has to offer.
This episode is brought to you by Dick Dyer Mercedes-Benz, the first Mercedes-Benz in South Carolina.
That's funny.
Well, I mean, it's something that I guess weighs on us a little bit because we were doing some first-time homebuyer workshops last year. And just because of some things we've got going on right now, that's on hold, but we want to get it started back up to try and educate people about the process because it is a long list of little steps, little things to do just to get ready to go buy a house.
Yeah, but if you mess one up, then the entire
Yeah.
process is...
I just think, and I would love to do, maybe you guys do a little brochure or something that you hand out at these things, because like I said, there were things I didn't even look at in the house. It was just like, enough of it sparkled for me. All I wanted was a garage. I'd never had a garage. I was hauling kids in. I have 4 kids in and out of the rain and the snow and whatever, all those groceries. I'm like, never doing that again. So it had a 2-car garage and the master bedroom was humongous. I could live in there for a week and never see my kids. Those were important things to me. But I didn't look at the carpets. I didn't look at certain things. And so maybe pointing out to first-time buyers, open your eyes. These are things that the paint on the walls. I had to have a lot of the rooms painted immediately. I didn't look at those things.
Well, and then it's the ongoing expense.
Yes.
Keeping the house soft washed once in a while, keeping the yard up.
I tell my kids that all the time.
The water heater is going to go out. The AC is going to go out. And
The maintenance is I would hope I'd never have to buy another house.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you said, though. You could afford the home, but you couldn't afford everything else that came with it. And a lot of the first-time home buyers, they talk to the loan officer and, well, you can afford this house. Yeah, but can you afford every other? And
right, who says that to them, right? And I think it's important to say that to people, even if you lose the immediate sale. To me, you purchased so much goodwill.
Yeah.
That's how I look at that. And that's how I approached advertising too. Some people couldn't afford to advertise. Well, darn if I'm not going to work with you in some way.
Yeah.
I'm going to help you out because you're helping me out. And it might come at a loss for me at first, but on the back end, it's going to come through. And I really think women in particular, because we are attracted to sparkly baubles, as you know, and a house, especially a first-time house, is a huge bauble.
And a huge achievement.
Yes, and they're not thinking right. I was not thinking right, and I was already almost 40 by then. I just was so motivated to get out and get into that I loved my house, I made it work, I did fix things, but it had to happen slowly over time. I just remember my family on one of my birthdays, finally, my gift was they all chipped in money so I could finally get a new kitchen floor. I needed it so bad. And I still had to put my own money into that floor because it's expensive to do that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So, I think trying to be honest with your clients about open your eyes, just because it glitters doesn't mean it's gold.
No. Well, and I think we can steer the conversation around into something both you and I, as older adults, are dealing with is, what's going on with your parents and their living situations.
Yes.
Because the cost of their care as they age into their 70s and 80s just skyrockets, it seems.
Yes.
And, that causes a dilemma sometimes, because sometimes they're very healthy in their 70s and 80s and they're able to take care of themselves.
Right.
Heaven's, my aunt and uncle's mom, she's 93 and still lives on her own and still drives.
I know people who are 100
Yeah,
still
they're
living
still
on their
functioning.
own and just having people check on them. Yeah.
But there are those people who do not.
Yes.
And I know you've confronted that situation, and that has brought about your second entrepreneurial effort. So,
Idiot.
Big words, big words.
so tell us a little bit about that,
Okay.
that story.
Right, so I stopped publishing the F-Suite to concentrate solely on a second magazine called Reverse, which is for people like you and I who are caring for aging parents, or maybe caring for aging parents, and we call it Reverse because I was a caregiver and it was like a role reversal. I became the parent, and my mom had to take her orders from me, not really, but it's just a very strange role reversal where you're more in charge than the parent is.
Yeah.
And if not solely, that you at least have a huge impact on the decisions that they make, whereas our parents all our lives have had huge impact on the decisions we make. So the reason I did that is I was a caregiver, and for 3 years, hands-on. Before that I helped out a lot. They were out of state, but I brought her down to South Carolina, and we won't go into the whole story, but it was the hardest several years of my life. It was very difficult. And as I've gotten deep into it, I realized that the senior care industry, the caregiver industry, it's in a crisis right now. We have the largest generation ever in America going into their 60s. The youngest of them are now entering the 60s, those baby boomers. So that means they're either in care or caring for somebody or soon to be in care. And when I say in care, it doesn't mean that you're going to be decrepit. You may need somebody to help take you to the grocery store or go to the doctor with you or stop and get your prescription. There's some level of care that we give our elderly. They can't do everything by themselves. And it gets progressively worse as they get older.
Sure.
So that's what happened to me. It was long distance helping, and then I brought her down, and then I eventually had to put her into an assisted living facility, and after that, hospice. It goes and goes and goes, but you never stop being that caregiver, no matter what the level is. And I found through that journey, it was very frustrating because I didn't know where to go for the help or the resources. We were making decisions as the problems arose rather than being informed that this could happen, or here's a way to if this happens, here's how you can navigate, or here's a service that can help you. It just didn't exist. And so after my mother died, I realized I have a platform where I can help people that were in my position. And I tell everybody that if this magazine was sitting in my mother's doctor's office while we were waiting, I not only would have picked it up, I would have stolen it and then gone home and subscribed to it. And it's not everything that it could be. Again, it takes advertisers. I can put more in here. It's a small magazine now, but there's no lack of information that those caregivers don't need. It's scary out there, and it's only going to get worse for so many reasons, not just because there's so many of them. The world is very ugly in this arena.
Well, I think a big thing that we talked about earlier was educating people, and female homebuyers need to be educated, but caregivers, like you said, it's a constant education you need because it's a progressive.
And they don't have the time to come to your presentation. When you said you want to do those first-time homebuyers, they have time to come and sit. A caregiver does not. It's a full-time job. To the point where I also am very vulnerable. I show this. I gained a massive amount of weight since I cared for my mother, and got very gray. And at our ages, that weight doesn't come off, just because I'm just going to go walk around the block for 10 minutes. It doesn't happen. Yeah. So I've got this mess on my hand, even though the problem's gone away. You know what I mean? It's just, that's how hard it is.
Well, and I think the challenge too, because you've got older adults, they've had a lifetime to accumulate wealth, assets, and
stuff.
It's
called stuff, yes.
Stuff. And how they have planned to use that or distribute that or not plan to use or distribute that, I think presents challenges to the kids when they get to that point where mom and dad's in the hospital and something's got to happen, and where are the wills, where are the living power
Yes,
attorneys?
so that's
where-
interesting. Great segue. This little gal right here, Kinsley Turnipseed,
Yeah,
is a professional organizer, and she specializes in senior move management. She's certified in that. She's
Okay.
been on my podcast, writes for the magazine, will be on the podcast again. She also gets into those legacy documents, how important that stuff is. Even photographs, those are important. There's people, I didn't know someone like her existed when I was a caregiver. I needed her and didn't know she existed. There's all sorts of services, real estate related and not, because she works with realtors all the time, downsizing people and getting rid of that stuff you're talking about.
yeah.
I didn't know these things existed, but now I have a magazine to promote these people and let caregivers know, hey, there's a professional out there that can help you
Sure.
with doing these things. And I'm meeting more and more service providers like that every day.
Yeah, because it happens way more than you ever think. I mean, we were helping an investor look at a house last week, and it was an estate sale.
Mhm.
It was a hoarder house.
Yep.
I mean, just
I
just
know a guy that
full
deals with
of
hoarding.
Yeah.
I know him too.
And-
Palmetto Commercial Services,
Yeah.
Mike Young, he's been on my podcast too. You all will run into that all the time. I'm gonna be talking to the Sheriff's Department because the Richland County Sheriff's Department, they deal with that all the time,
I know.
all the time.
It's sad to see. I mean, because these people, something has happened where they've disconnected from their family, or maybe they don't have family and they just don't have a way to get help.
Yes.
And like last summer, we were approached by a family. That one of the parents was in the hospital, didn't really need to come home. They needed to go in assisted living. They needed to sell the house quick, and we were fortunately able to step in and help them. They had found somebody who was helping them find a place, and she connected us with them. So it's a good thing to have people like that.
Yeah, she's made, and I know other people that do just as cool things as she does, I would like to stress that we take a very proactive approach in the articles. In other words, you need to be thinking about these things before you take a knee-jerk reaction to a problem.
Yeah.
You can't just say, oh, this assisted living place looks good, that's where we'll put mom when the time comes. They got a whole new management,
Spots might not be open as well.
That too, the employment situation today is horrible. The whole senior living facility employment issue thing, that whole industry is in big trouble. Big trouble, because they cannot keep workers, they cannot retain workers, they can't hire workers because those workers are demanding so much money now. They used to be like $12 an hour employees, no more. And they'll go into the private sector and do it for cash under the table and get a lot of money for hanging out with your mom.
Yeah.
It's bad, it's bad. You're gonna see some of those companies go under.
Well, and because some of these situations are not just as easy as think, well, I'll just let mom and dad live with me.
Oh my gosh! My mother and I were like best friends. I mean,
Yeah.
truly surpassed the mother-daughter role decades ago. And I brought her to live with me. She's as sweet as she can be. She's just darling. But she's irritating, and so am I. I mean, it's not easy.
I get that way about pets.
Yes.
I love pets if they're not mine, and I can go
Yes.
visit you when I want to.
Yes.
But when you're with us full time, I'm not going to be your biggest fan all the time.
My philosophy on pets is animals in general, is they belong in the woods, in the backyard, or on my plate. And I don't
Go with
want
it,
them.
yeah.
Yes. Oh, I hear you.
It's always better when they're not here.
Kindred
Yeah.
spirits. Oh gosh. Yeah, it's tough out there. Yeah, if you think that just bringing your parents in is going to be an easy solution, it's not, because especially if they don't, with dementia, it's a problem, and if they don't have dementia, it's a problem, because if they don't have dementia, they're still stubborn and set in their ways and don't want to hear anything you got to say.
Well, I went through that whole thing with my brother and his wife. They, cooked up this idea with my parents of like, well, we'll buy a house and y'all just move in and it'll be wonderful and glorious. And, it lasted about 8 or 9 months.
Yes.
And then everybody was at everybody's throat because they just,
It's
you know,
different.
it's
Yes.
different, and everybody, you know, the space that people needed just couldn't be found.
Yes,
And so, you know, alternatives, having people like this that can work through the process or help people find other places to live where they can get some
there's
level
services
of
that do
care
that
or
specifically.
certain
Right.
services.
Right, so just like you're a realtor and you help people find the house of their dreams, there are services, I know 3 here in Columbia, that you can, they're like assisted living facility realtors, you know, you're like, I don't know what level of care my parents need, so they will assess, you know, they'll ask you questions, meet your parents, assess the situation, say, well, you probably fit into assisted living, or you fit into skilled nursing, and what's your budget, and we're gonna take you around and show you these different places around town, and you choose after that the one that you think is best. But going in blind without knowing,
Yeah,
which is what we did, and my sister's an elder law attorney. She's in Virginia. She helped as much as she could, but she's not in South Carolina, doesn't know what's going on down here. So we knew how to ask questions, but I mean, it's crazy out there,
yeah.
crazy.
Well, I think, I love your passion.
Thanks.
You know,
It's exhausting.
but anything fun, anything worth doing is worth doing well. And I think that's why I've enjoyed getting to know you over the
Thanks.
last couple of years.
Yeah.
Because you are so passionate about it, and people see that in you. You know, both when you were, you know, championing women business entrepreneurs
Which
here
I still
in the
do,
women's area.
right.
Oh, yeah, oh, absolutely. And, you know, now taking on the cause of helping people, you know, figure out what it is that they need for their parents, or just older people in general, knowing, you know, what are my options because I need to do X.
Right.
And making it more of an easy process, and something that, you know, younger generations like him can learn to be thinking about in the back of his mind. You know, at some point we're gonna have to cross this bridge, let's prepare for it now.
Right, so I would love to, I also have a podcast and would love to bring
Yeah.
you all on, because we talk to financial planners and insurance agents and even realtors. You have to be thinking ahead,
Yeah.
even though you're in your 20s, you know, I wouldn't say right this minute, but surely by the time you hit 30 and you're working full time and, you know, you're not a kid anymore, you've got to be thinking about life insurance and what am I going to do when mom and dad get older. If you have siblings, you have to start talking to them. And nobody wants to have these conversations. They're hard. We joke about it. It's like, you know, at Thanksgiving dinner we can't get along. You want to throw in wills and money and dementia. It gets really ugly, but you have to do it. So I say, even if one of the siblings says, well, I'm not going to help out at all, you know, I don't have any money, and there's, you know, I live, you know, 5 states away, at least you know that.
Yeah.
That's information,
Yeah.
right?
You're not thinking about that being
Yeah,
an
I have
option later on.
Right, I had a brother, I still have him. He's in California, and we're over here on the East Coast, and he could never be hands-on help. I mean, he would come to visit, but there was nothing he could do. And I said, that's not true, dude. I want you to send mom flowers every month.
Yeah.
Just send her flowers. And he did. It was lovely,
Yeah.
lovely.
Well, but some families don't even have that conversation, right? Like, you know,
I had to force it,
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to have it.
Yeah.
And we did not talk, even with my sister, because there's weird dynamics in the family.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have those conversations either, and there was a lot of strife between us, but in the end, I think the bottom line was, I think they all turned around and said, Anna did a really good job.
Yeah.
I made mistakes, you know, whatever, but it could have been better if we'd all put our heads together. And
Early on.
Yeah, because I had some resentments too. I was tired. You know, nobody stayed me. You know what I mean? I never got a weekend off unless my sister came in from out of town.
Yeah.
And I thanked her much later for that. But yeah, communication is probably the most important thing. Whether you're talking about real estate or anything, you have to communicate with people. And I'm a pretty good communicator.
Yes, and how you communicate makes all the difference in the world.
Yes. I'm trying to teach my kids that. Just you cannot be yelling at people all the time just because they don't like what you gotta say.
Yeah.
Just listen. Just listen.
Just
So,
listen. Well, it has been a pleasure having
Thank
a
you.
conversation with you.
well,
And,
thanks for being interested. I always wonder who's interested in the stuff I'm doing. I just, you know, I don't know. It interests me.
Yeah.
But I was surprised to have you call me and say, we'd like to talk about this. It's been a joy.
Well, thank you so much, and we look forward to returning the favor. with you
Yes,
very
we'll have
soon.
you on for sure, both
And,
of you.
So best of luck. And
Thank you.
how can people reach you if they have questions about your magazine or advertising or doing business with you?
Okay, the best thing to do is to go to the website. It's reversemagazine.us, reversemagazine.us. And you can reach me personally. You can email me at anna@reversemagazine.us. That's the best way to get in touch with me. And you can subscribe to the magazine. I mean, we'd love to send it to you. So thanks again. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.